but from this country's overall health. My hat's off to you, my friend. Greeks, you know, are very tight. We were getting increasingly annoyed with the Republican candidate for the presidency because he kept suggesting that if we didn't do things, we'd be like Greece over and over again. Well, Greece has sinned, no question about it. But as Barry will tell you, nobody's ever gotten out of a recession with austerity. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if you want to know what the alternative is to what I hope will be a robust effort at investing in the expansion of this country's economy, just take a look at what the EU is doing to Southern Europe, and you'll get a pretty good sense of the value of austerity. In any event, I assume you're not retiring, really. We expect a lot of good work from you. And who knows, maybe we'll all go down to Cuba one of these days and see if we can't be helpful down there under circumstances where Americans will be free to travel wherever they want to travel and help the Cuban people to emerge from this very difficult half-century and combine democracy and healthy economic growth at the same time. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you very much, Governor Dukakis, for being here today, number one, and for sharing your insights and wisdom about what I think would be distributive justice. Now, that's a term I learned from Professor Iatridis, so I do think that you have much to offer, and you should contemplate running for office someday. We have a very distinguished panel to respond to Governor Dukakis' remarks, and I'll introduce them briefly to you. I want to reiterate, it will be brief, because when I got their bios, we'd be here a long time if I was going over their individual accomplishments. I'll begin with Reverend June Cooper, who before she was Reverend June Cooper, she was both a graduate of our school and a very popular and respected adjunct faculty member who taught our cross-cultural course for several years. A graduate of the Master of Divinity program at Andover Newton Theological School and an ordained Baptist minister, June works to more fully integrate the principles of faith-based organizations with those that inform the system of community-based human services. She currently serves as the executive director of the City Mission Society of Boston, the oldest multi-service social justice agency in New England, founded in 1816. Prior to this, Reverend Cooper served as regional administrator in the Boston Metropolitan Area Office of the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, as program director of the Boston Healthy Start Initiative, as program director for the Medical Foundation Incorporated. Through these and similar positions, June has developed special expertise in facilitating private-public collaborations, designing and managing community-based programs, and linking community-based social service providers with grassroots community groups. So welcome back, June. Dr. Barry Bluestone. Dr. Barry Bluestone is the Russell B. and Andre B. Stearns Trustee Professor of Political Economy at Northeastern University. He's also the founding director of the Dukakis Center for Urban and Regional Policy and the founding dean of the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs at Northeastern University. Before assuming these posts, Dr. Bluestone spent 12 years at the University of Massachusetts, Boston as the Frank L. Boyden Professor of Political Economy and as a senior fellow at the university's John W. McCormick Institute of Public Affairs. He was the founding director of UMass Boston's PhD program in public policy. Prior to that, he taught economics at Boston College for 16 years and was director of the university's Social Welfare Research Institute. At the Dukakis Center, Professor Bluestone has led research projects on housing, local economic development, state and local public finance, and the manufacturing sector of Massachusetts. As a political economist, he has written widely in the areas of income distribution, business and industrial policy, labor management relations, higher education finance, and urban and regional economic development. Welcome, Dr. Bluestone. And now for our esteemed Professor Iatridis. Professor Iatridis has held positions of leadership throughout his entire professional career, beginning as an Associate Director of the Child Studies Center of Philadelphia, then Director of Social Planning for Iatridis Associates in Athens, Greece, Director of the Graduate School of Acoustics in Athens, Director of the Institute of Human Science at Boston College, a position he assumed in 1966 when he began at Boston College, and Director of the Social Welfare Regional Institute of the U.S. Department of Health and Educational Welfare. He has planned and secured government funding from Hungary, Poland, Greece, and Georgia for international conferences on the transition from central planning to free markets of Eastern and Central Europe. He has provided workshops for health and welfare executives through the Greek Ministry of Health. He has been an active presenter for years at the Hellenic Conference of Health Policy and Administration. He has been a prolific author of scholarly articles and books, including his books on social justice and the welfare state in Central Eastern Europe, privatization in Central and Eastern Europe, social policy, institutional context of social development, social organizations, social policy for development, social policy for development, health and welfare organizations. And if you're one of his students, you read all those books. He has been a visiting lecturer and scholar at universities in Greece, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Switzerland. He was appointed to the Education Committee of the 2004 Olympics in Athens. His service to the Graduate School of Social Work and the university has been legendary, serving on all of the major school committees over the past years, including Academic Planning Committee, International Committee, Promotion and Tenure Committee, and so forth. For the university, he has chaired the University Grievance Committee and has been, I believe, the longest-serving member of the Faculty Compensation Committee. He has chaired the school's community organization, planning, policy, and administration sequence, and was the first to establish a series of international courses that included comparative policy analysis and travel with students and colleagues to China, Russia, Greece, and Cuba, a trip he has made 29 times. So, it is clear that Professor Iatridis is a renowned international scholar whose career has been dedicated to social justice for the most disadvantaged, making him a model social worker and for our students and for the entire profession of social work. So I will now turn the floor over to our distinguished panelists, ask them to take seats up here. We'll begin with Reverend Cooper and Professor Bluestone, and then we'll give the last word to Professor Iatridis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm a Baptist preacher, and there's no clock in the back of the room. So you know what that means. We're in trouble. But needless to say, this isn't the occasion to preach, but this is the occasion to celebrate a life and a commitment to the work that I so dearly love and cherish. And to be back here at Boston College is always great. It's always a challenge to find out where I'm going to park. So, speak about entitlements. I need a handicap sticker. What I want to say first to Governor Dukakis, we need to have a private conversation, because I want to thank this man. He came to see a little program that I was running back in 1976 over at Dimmitt Community Health Center, and was my first job. I think it was in the 80s, excuse me. He came, and my back was against the wall because the funding was falling apart. And he was visiting the health center, and he took a special little detour over to where the training center that I was running. So I want to thank you for that. And that program was very successful and went on and did very great things. So I thank you for that. I want to speak just briefly about some of the challenges that we face on the ground. We're here, obviously, Professor Iatridis has always spoke and has always been a champion for not just doing charity, which we love to do at the church, give a new coat, or to put new shoes on someone, and we will always need those things. But the challenge is really, how do we go upstream? So how do we get the babies, we get the children as they come down the stream, but how do we go upstream and begin to change some of the systems and some of the policies that really do not work well for children, for women, for seniors, and the like. So my work at City Mission has been very much informed, and I've been privileged to be able to work with the board and congregations throughout the metropolitan area to try to put in place some programs and some responses to the fact that many people, as Governor Dukakis said, there's no floor to stand on. Many people do not have a floor to stand on. So one of the efforts that we started early on at City Mission was a program, switched it from a charity model where people could come to the door and knock on the door and get their rental assistance, get a lot of things done, but we switched that program over to looking at the issue of homelessness prevention. There are a lot of initiatives to try to stem and to work with people that are homeless. But again, the idea is to go upstream. It's so hard to climb out of poverty when you've fallen into it. So some of our work right now is informed by this notion of, let us try to prevent some of the issues, and let's give people tools, and let's give people and empower people and work with them to be empowered, to try to go upstream and to negotiate systems and to be aware of what's really going on and looking at the whole issues of around systemic oppression. The other piece that we work on now at City Mission is Superintendent Johnson has a program in the Boston Public School called the Circle of Promise. And it includes about 47 schools that are failing terribly. Just name the indicator of child success. And the superintendent has asked faith communities to get involved, not just Christian faith communities, but the Muslim communities and the Jewish communities to get involved and to get connected to a school. And it is so interesting as we look at the numbers now. As I was saying yesterday, many of the kids at the school that we're in, the Russell School in Dorchester, 95% of those kids are growing up in poverty. And if we know anything about poverty and achievement, we know that less than half of those kids will walk across the stage and receive a diploma. Now, there are about 360 kids in that school, so do the math. And the big question is, what are we missing out on when we are not supporting and being behind our children? Another interesting number that is rising up as we look at the achievement gap is that the numbers around the economics seem to trump the issues of race. So that we're talking mostly about poor kids, and certainly race is a factor that is also very dominant with that. Last but not least, I want to talk about an effort that we're doing to try to bring people into the city. I think many of us might know that we live in two different worlds, right? We live in there are suburban communities and then there are urban communities. And one of the efforts that we started about 5 years ago was a service learning program that brings young people into the city of Boston, not just to clean a wall or to scrub a toilet, to do these kinds of things, but to really to challenge their stereotypes, to begin to break down the stereotypes that people have. You know, when we read the newspaper and we read the statistics, we don't oftentimes know that there's a face, that there's a life, that there's a human being behind those numbers. So this program exposes young people. And we're starting to see that not only is it that we need to have suburban people exposed, we need to have kids in the inner city exposed as well. So that's a wonderful effort that is opening people's eyes to seeing more than just reading the paper, but seeing that there are real people. When we talk about issues of poverty and discrimination and racism, that there are real people impacted by that. And lastly, when you don't have a floor, if you don't have a floor, you at least need a voice. And one of the wonderful things that is happening now is that City Mission has a program called Public Voice, which worked really hard before with Corey reform issues about 5 years ago. And basically, this is a program that provides people with skills to get up and to tell their story. You know, we don't look like, everybody has a story, and sometimes they don't look like their story. And when you hear people's stories, again, it's another way to begin to look beyond what we believe and what we think about people. Our Christian narrative, as I talk a lot, and I would say that the faith narrative talks a lot about being in community. It doesn't speak, at least in my tradition, about being a rugged individual and going it alone. It speaks to the common good. It speaks to the fact that we as people are all bound by an invisible force that pulls us together as human beings. And so with that narrative, I think that it is very important as these issues get talked about and debated and scrutinized, that at the end of the day, that we remember who we are and to whom we belong. Now, to you, Professor Iatridis, there was somebody many years ago by a pond in Concord who said something like this: "Canaries do not sing in a cage." So I think that you have taught so many people to sing and to come out of the cage. And certainly I use that a lot when I talk about the issues that I deal with, issues of justice, issues of equality, issues of having a voice to speak. So you have empowered so many people to find their voice and then to use their voice to make change. So I just want to leave you with those words and to thank you very much.
Well, this is a very, very, very special occasion for me, maybe just as special as it is for my dear friend Demetrius. In the fall of 1971, at the ripe old age of 27, I arrived on this campus as a new assistant professor of economics. But I was very fortunate as an economist because my office was not in Carney Hall, which you may remember. I don't think Carney Hall even exists anymore, right? Still does. Unfortunately. But my office, because I was with the Social Welfare Research Institute, was in McGuinn Hall, which is where Demetrius's office and the